We knew this day was coming since July 1st. Anthony Duclair has cut his dreads and his beard to get ready to play for the New York Islanders. But is Lou Lamoriello's policy on hair fair and good for this team? We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have got a busy show today, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That includes hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll discuss it here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. I wanted to start off today's show discussing, it's been a little bit of a controversy on social media. It's something we all knew was going to happen, at least as of July 1st. But it did happen earlier this week. Islanders newly signed free agent forward Anthony Duclair posting on social media a photograph of himself cutting his dreads. And look, we all know what Lou Lamoriello's hair policy for the New York Islanders is. No long hair, can't be below the collar. No facial hair, no mustaches, no beards. Okay, exception, playoff beards. Okay, during the playoffs only. And then obviously, when the team is traveling on the road, business attire, blah, 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 blah. Anthony Duclair showed himself cutting his dreads. I mean, the photograph just showed the dreads after they were cut on the bathroom counter there. And obviously, he's got to shave the beard that he wore. And if you're on YouTube and you take a look at the thumbnail photo for this episode, you'll see that last year, Anthony Duclair with Tampa Bay, with San Jose, facial hair and the dreadlocks. And it goes against Lou's team policy. And I'll be honest with you, I have very mixed feelings about this team policy. I know the origins of it. Lou was friends with the late George Steinbrenner, the longtime owner of the Yankees. That was one of Steinbrenner's little things that he did. You got to remember, it meant even more back in the day. Steinbrenner bought the Yankees in the early 70s when hair, generally speaking, was longer and there was more of a social attachment or significance to facial hair, long hair versus short hair. And Steinbrenner wanted Yankees to have that certain business-like quality. And let's face it, Lou Lamoriello wants the same thing. And on a certain level, I can understand, hey, if I'm running a company, if I own a company, I want to present a certain look to the public. If I own a store, I want my employees to look a certain way. Okay, to a point, I get it. I also get that it's 2024 and the days of players being completely subservient to ownership and management are long past us. So I guess one question is, does Lou Lamoriello's policy on hair and facial hair, hair length, facial hair, hurt the New York Islanders in the battle for signing free agents every offseason? Keep in mind that the New York Islanders, as I've said a few times on this show before, everydayers will be familiar, in the history of the Islanders, they have never signed an elite, big-ticket free agent ever in their prime. Anthony Duclair, nice signing, not a star, okay? Good player, solid top six forward, not a star in his prime, okay? They have never signed a Jaromir Jagr, a Wayne Gretzky. They have never signed a superstar player, an elite player in free agency. That predates Lou Lamoriello. Does Lou's policy prevent some players from signing with the Islanders? Probably not a lot. Maybe the circumstances would be if, two teams have equal salary offers and one team would let a guy keep his facial hair and the Islanders won't, okay, I'll sign with the other team. But to me, if you're looking at the hierarchy, the hair rule is probably further down the list than the money. I would even say that the taxes that you pay would be a little bit, and the cost of living in the New York metropolitan area would be higher on most players' list than the facial hair and the hair length rules. It did not stop Anthony Duclair, a guy who was known for his dreads, known for, having facial hair over different parts of his career. He went for the contract length, the modified no trade clause. He went for the security that the Islanders gave him and his relationship with Patrick Roy. On the other hand, while I understand the logic behind the rule, I personally, and as you can see, I don't have long hair. I don't have a beard or a mustache. I just don't. But to have my boss be that strict and tell me how I have to wear my hair doesn't always rub me the right way. And I think there is a large middle ground between what the Islanders' policy is and what the Islanders' policy could be. I know the game of hockey needs more promotion, needs to be have more personality in their players. And the theory, or one of the reasons behind the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello's policy, is you don't want to distract from the team ethos. You want the team to be united. You want the team to have the same look, the same sort of appearance, the same philosophy. I get that to a point, but you want to sell tickets. You want to promote the personality of players. And part of that personality can be having longer hair or having facial hair or just dressing a little bit differently on the road. These are things that help fans identify with players and, root more for players, get attached to players. And guess what? That sells tickets. And this is something that has been a big problem across the NHL, marketing their stars. Again, I see both sides of this issue. I'm not going to sit here and say that the facial hair and facial length policy, hair length policy, is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but I can't say I like it either. I think there should be a little bit more flexibility involved. But look, Lou Lamoriello is going to do Lou Lamoriello. And that is going to mean this policy is highly unlikely to change anytime in the near future. And look, until Lou Lamoriello probably retires, this is going to be the Islanders' policy. And the hope is you go on a long playoff run and then you see a team full of playoff beards and facial hair. Why? People may not remember. The New York Islanders are the team that invented the playoff beard, that made it a thing back during the dynasty years when this team won 4 straight Stanley Cups. And look, Al Arbor had a no facial hair policy at one point, but he made an exception for Clark Gillies and Ken Morrow at different times. To me, all of those things add to your team and to your attachment to the team. So while I don't think it's the end of the world that this is Lou Lamoriello's policy, I think you could loosen it up a little bit, allow the players, you want to make a policy, no ripped jeans or even no jeans on the road. Okay, I'm with you. You want to make a policy your hair can't be down to your shoulders. Okay. You want to make a policy that if you do have facial hair, it has to be neat and trimmed. There's a lot of middle ground out there. And I do find that Lou Lamoriello's policy is a little old-fashioned and outdated, but, Lou's old-fashioned too. And I guess he's entitled to make the rules that he wants to make. If he was, running the team in a slightly different way, I might even care less. But Anthony Duclair cutting his hair, knowing that the Islanders don't allow it. And the good news about that, putting aside whether you love or hate or don't care about the policy, if Anthony Duclair is cutting his hair in preparation for training camp, means we're getting pretty darn close to training camp. And that, as an Islander person, fan, follower, that is exciting news. All right, we have got more to discuss on today's show. We've talked about a number of possible players the Islanders could be interested in. Well, another one of those young, talented players has been traded, not to the Islanders, but within the Metropolitan Division. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about this pivotal season ahead for Kyle MacLean, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a high-scoring winger with the Islanders in the early to mid-1990s, who came over from the Hartford Whalers. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of Locked On Islanders will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thanks for making Locked On Islanders your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, throughout the offseason, we've talked about a number of players who, we figured were available and could help the New York Islanders. And one of those guys was Rutger McGroarty, who basically did not want to sign with the Winnipeg Jets, did not see a path to the NHL there. Just finished his sophomore season at the University of Michigan, was 9th in the entire NCAA in points with 52 points in 36 games, and basically demanded a trade from the Winnipeg organization. Well, he got the trade, and he ends up with the Pittsburgh Penguins. They gave up Braden Yeager, who is one of their top prospects, a 19-year-old who scored 35 goals and 95 points with the Moose Jaw Warriors of the Western League. And now, McGroarty is going to be in Pittsburgh, which means the Islanders are likely to see him regularly as long as he remains a division rival. And look, let's face it, based on this price, the Jets would have wanted either Cole Yzerman or a first-round pick. See, here's the two obstacles that kind of made it tough for the Islanders to acquire McGroarty. The first is obvious, cap space. Islanders don't have any. And even if you're signing McGroarty to an entry-level deal, you'd still have to get rid of a couple of players in order to fit him under the cap. And McGroarty signed his ELC with the Penguins just a few hours after the trade was announced. And I'm sure it was negotiated before the trade was announced in principle so that, the Penguins knew they were going to get him and sign him, and that was it. The problem is that if the Jets were looking for prospects, top prospects, the Islanders' cupboard, while not as bare as it was a year ago, if you're going player for player, if the Jets wanted a top prospect in exchange for McGroarty, other teams could have better options to offer the Jets than the Islanders. And I'm not saying Cole Yzerman is not a good pick or a good player for the Islanders to trade if, they wanted to get McGroarty. But it's one of those things that's probably a lateral move. You're trading one elite prospect for another elite prospect. Now, granted, McGroarty is a couple of years ahead of Yzerman in his development, so there's that factor. McGroarty is believed to be NHL ready. If not, maybe he starts the season in the AHL and then, graduates to the NHL midseason or late season. But he's going to get every opportunity to, make the Penguins' regular roster and be part of the team this year. Yzerman, as you heard on Monday's show with Hadi Kalakesh of Locked On NHL Prospects, probably 4 years away, maybe 5, according to Hadi. I think it's 3 or 4, but I'm going to defer to Hadi on prospects. The point being, if you're trading a top prospect to get a top prospect, how much are you improving your team? The Islanders need to replenish that pool. They need those younger players, but to make the team younger, you got to trade older players to get those younger guys. You trade away a J.G. Pajot and a first-round pick, that's a little different. Then you're making your team younger, even if you're giving away a potential future, young prospect in that first-round pick. So, again, the cap situation and the way this team is constructed, both of which are on Lou Lamoriello as far as, he's the reason that it is the way it is, preventing the New York Islanders from being serious contenders, from landing this available prospect, McGroarty, from the Winnipeg Jets. I didn't think the Islanders would end up with Rutger McGroarty. Didn't think it was going to happen. But the fact that he ends up in the division with the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team that also has an older roster and wants to get some younger talent, and will possibly be fighting with the Islanders for one of those final playoff spots in the Metropolitan Division, that is more disappointing to me as someone who is following the Islanders and covering the Islanders and rooting for the Islanders than it is that they did not get McGroarty. Because, again, if all they wanted was a young, highly regarded prospect, that doesn't help the Islanders all that much in the long, big-term scheme of things. I guess if you want to win now, you'd rather have McGroarty than Yzerman. 5 years from now, well, we don't know which player will be considered better. We're going to find out over time. All right, more to get to on today's show. We've talked a lot about players who are at a critical juncture in their NHL careers, but we're going to add one to the list that we haven't talked about, and that's Kyle MacLean. We're going to talk about that. Plus, our Islanders birthday of the day. We've got all of that and a whole lot more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. And, let's face it, that is something that a lot of ticket sale apps, it gets frustrating when you have to go through all of those different tickets. So, Game Time Picks, the curation makes it easier to save even more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And you've got the all-in pricing, which, to me, you turn on that feature and there's no fees at checkout, and you understand that, you know exactly what you're going to pay before you purchase the seat. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On NHL, the Locked On NHL podcast, where the season never ends, providing you with national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL in the description, so you don't need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, we've been talking a lot about different players who, need a big season. And to me, one guy we haven't talked about who I think should be on that list is Kyle MacLean. And I'll tell you why. Here is a guy who just made his NHL debut a year ago. And, he finally got into some games mid-season, played very well, and he stuck. Finished the season, played the first 43 games of the year, more or less, with Bridgeport. Finished the season, 32 games with the Islanders, including all 5 playoff games, or in addition, 5 playoff games. Scored a goal in the playoffs. But here's the thing about MacLean. He's 25 years old. He is not a kid by NHL definitions. And much like Hudson Fasching a year ago, here's a guy who, spent an extra season in the Ontario League in juniors, spent 3.5 seasons, 3 and parts of a fourth, at Bridgeport at the AHL level, and then finally got his chance at the age of 25 or 24 in the NHL. Much like Hudson Fasching, this is a crossroads season for Kyle MacLean. MacLean can play well and basically establish himself as an NHL player, or he could take a step back and sort of be on the bubble like Hudson Fasching is. Now, Fasching is older than MacLean. Fasching 29, MacLean 25. Fasching is in the last year of his contract. MacLean has 3 seasons left this year and 2 more. But again, is MacLean going to be a quality bottom 6 NHL guy? Is he going to be an AHL guy who you can call up for just a few games when necessary? Or is he going to be one of those quadruple A players, the dreaded middle, where he's really good at the AHL level, almost too good for the AHL, but not good enough for whatever reason his game doesn't translate to the NHL? Right now, you got Kyle MacLean at the league minimum, $775,000 a year for 3 years. Good deal, but he's got to be productive. He's got to establish himself as an NHLer rather than an AHLer, and this is his big chance to do just that. I'm confident in Kyle MacLean. I like what I saw from him. I think he can put up better offensive numbers. I don't think he's getting more than 12 to 15 goals. I think that would be sort of the high side for him, but maybe he can prove me wrong. We'll see. But I think he will be a solid 4th-line player for the New York Islanders for the next few years. But he's got to prove that he is a legit NHL player, or he's back into limbo like he has been previously. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today is the 60th birthday of former Islanders forward Ray Ferraro, the native of Trail, British Columbia, a 5th-round pick of the Hartford Whalers back in 1982, made his NHL debut with the Whalers in 84-85, scored 30 goals for Hartford in his 2nd season, scored 41 goals for Hartford in 88-89, got dealt to the Islanders early in the 90-91 season, and in his first full season on the island in 91-92, 40 goals, 40 assists, 80 points. In 93, he was a huge part of the Islanders' magical playoff run. He had 13 goals and 20 points in 18 games during that magic run. After leaving the Islanders after the 94-95 season, he played 1 year with the Rangers, went on to play for the Kings, the Thrashers, and the Blues before hanging up his skates after the 2001-2002 season. 1,258 career NHL games, 408 goals, 898 points, 1,288 penalty minutes, add 21 goals and 43 points in 68 playoff games. That 93 season with the Islanders was by far his best playoff year of his career. His best game as an Islander during the regular season, it's easy. One of them anyway, January 7th, 1992, Islanders visiting the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit. Steve Weeks, the goalie for the Islanders, Tim Cheveldae for Detroit. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Ray Ferraro, well, he had a magic game. He opened the scoring just 2 minutes and 48 seconds into the game. Benoit Hogue, Graham Townsend with the assists. Then 2 straight goals by Detroit. And then late in the period, Ferraro, his 2nd of the game. Again, Graham Townsend and Benoit Hogue, the assists. Ferraro assists on a goal in the 3rd period with the game still tied at 2. Bill Berg got the goal. And then Ferraro scores twice in 43 seconds. His 23rd of the year from Benoit Hogue and his 24th of the year unassisted. Islanders beat the Red Wings 5-2. But for our Islanders' birthday of the day, Ray Ferraro, 4 goals and assist. He's +4. And he scored his 4 goals on 5 shots on goal. That did lead the team. 4 helpers for Benoit Hogue in this game. But the big story of the day clearly was Ray Ferraro with his 5-point night, 35 saves for Steve Weeks in a game where both teams took 37 shots on goal. Ray Ferraro, great offensive player for the Whalers, the Islanders, the Kings, the Thrashers. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, we're back on Monday with all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Training camp getting so close. And I can't wait to see the team back on the ice. We'll have it all covered for you all year long. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.